Alesia. The siege of Alesia, in 52 BC, stands out not only for its scale, but also for the sheer audacity of Julius Caesar's strategy. Vercingetorix, leading a vast Gallic army, sought refuge within the fortified town, hoping to wear down the Roman legions. Caesar, however, responded with an almost unbelievable feat of engineering. He constructed not one but two rings of fortifications, an inner one to contain the Gauls within Alesia, and an outer one to defend against any relief forces. The Roman siege lines stretched for miles, an immense undertaking that showcased the discipline and engineering prowess of the Roman army. Despite numerous attempts by the Gauls to break the siege, Caesar's forces held firm, eventually leading to Vercingetorix's surrender and solidifying Roman control over Gaul. The siege exemplifies the strategic genius of Caesar and the logistical capabilities of the Roman war machine. Masada. The story of Masada is one of defiance against overwhelming odds. In 73 AD, a group of Jewish rebels, known as the Sicarii, held out against the Roman army atop this remote desert fortress. After the fall of Jerusalem, Masada became a symbol of Jewish resistance. The Romans, under the command of Flavius Silva, constructed a massive ramp on the western side of the mountain to reach the fortress walls. The siege lasted for months, and when the Romans finally breached the defenses, they found that the defenders had chosen mass suicide rather than surrender. This tragic end cemented Masada as a symbol of Jewish resilience, and a testament to the lengths people will go to in the face of oppression. The determination of the Sicarii, and the brutal efficiency of the Roman response, make Masada a compelling and haunting story. Constantinople, 1453. The fall of Constantinople in 1453 marked the end of the Byzantine Empire, and a significant turning point in world history. The Ottoman army, led by Sultan Mehmed II, laid siege to the city with a force far greater than the defenders. The Byzantine walls, which had protected the city for centuries, were bombarded by massive Ottoman cannons, some of the largest ever built. The siege lasted for 53 days, during which the defenders, led by Emperor Constantine XI, fought bravely against overwhelming odds. The Ottomans eventually breached the walls, and after fierce street fighting, the city fell. The conquest of Constantinople opened the way for Ottoman expansion into Europe, and ushered in a new era in the region. The event also highlights the importance of technological advancement in warfare, as the Ottoman cannons proved decisive in overcoming the city's formidable defenses. Tenochtitlan. The siege of Tenochtitlan in 1521 was a brutal and decisive event in the Spanish conquest of the Aztec Empire. Hernán Cortés, with his Spanish conquistadors and indigenous allies, laid siege to the Aztec capital, which was built on an island in Lake Texcoco. The siege lasted for several months, during which the Spanish cut off the city's supply lines and subjected it to constant bombardment. The Aztecs, led by Cuauhtémoc, fought fiercely to defend their city, but they were ultimately overwhelmed by the superior weaponry and tactics of the Spanish. Disease also played a significant role, as smallpox decimated the Aztec population. The fall of Tenochtitlan marked the end of the Aztec Empire and the beginning of Spanish colonial rule in Mexico. The siege stands as a stark example of the devastating impact of European colonization on the indigenous peoples of the Americas. Vienna, 1683. The Siege of Vienna, in 1683, stands as a pivotal moment in European history, marking the end of the Ottoman Empire's expansion into Central Europe, and solidifying the Habsburg dynasty's control over the region. For centuries, the Ottoman Empire had been a major threat to Europe, expanding its territory through military conquest. By the late 17th century, the Ottomans had reached the height of their power, and were poised to strike at the heart of Europe. Vienna, the capital of the Habsburg Empire, was the key to controlling Central Europe. In 1683, the Ottoman army, led by Grand Vizier Kara Mustafa Pasha, launched a massive siege of Vienna. The Ottoman army numbered over 100,000 soldiers, while the defenders of Vienna, led by Count Ernst Rudiger von Starhemberg, numbered only around 15,000. The Ottomans surrounded the city and began to bombard it with heavy artillery. The siege lasted for 2 months, during which the defenders endured constant bombardment and fierce assaults. The situation inside Vienna became increasingly desperate, with food and supplies running low. However, the defenders held firm, hoping for reinforcements to arrive. The Habsburg Emperor Leopold I appealed to the Christian rulers of Europe for help, and a coalition of forces, led by King John III Sobieski of Poland, responded. Sobieski's Polish army, renowned for its heavy cavalry, marched to the relief of Vienna. On September 12, 1683, the Polish and Habsburg forces launched a surprise attack on the Ottoman army, catching them off guard. The Polish cavalry in a massive charge broke through the Ottoman lines, routing the enemy and forcing them to retreat. The victory at Vienna saved Europe from Ottoman domination, and marked the beginning of the decline of the Ottoman Empire. It also strengthened the Habsburg dynasty, and paved the way for Austria to become a major power in Europe. Pavia. The Battle of Pavia in 1525 was a decisive engagement in the Italian Wars, fundamentally changing military tactics and power dynamics in Europe. Francis I, the King of France, sought to control territories in Italy, leading him to besiege the city of Pavia, which was under the control of the Holy Roman Empire, ruled by Charles V. The French army, confident in their traditional strength, heavily armored knights, believed they could easily capture the city. However, the imperial forces defending Pavia were employing new military strategies that would prove devastatingly effective. The key innovation was the increased reliance on infantry armed with arquebuses, early firearms. These arquebusiers were trained to fight in formations, delivering coordinated volleys of fire that could penetrate armor and decimate enemy ranks. As the French knights charged, expecting to break through the imperial lines, they were met with a hail of bullets. The arquebuses proved surprisingly effective against the heavily armored knights, inflicting heavy casualties and disrupting their formations. The battle quickly turned into a rout for the French. Francis I himself was captured, a humiliating defeat for the French monarchy. The Battle of Pavia demonstrated the declining importance of heavy cavalry on the battlefield, and the rise of infantry armed with firearms. It marked a significant shift in military tactics, paving the way for the development of more modern armies. The victory also solidified Charles V's dominance in Italy, and further weakened the French monarchy. The consequences of Pavia reverberated throughout Europe, influencing military thinking and shaping the course of future conflicts. Orleans. The Siege of Orléans, lasting from October 1428 to May 1429, holds a prominent place in French history as a critical turning point in the Hundred Years' War. At this time, the English, allied with the Burgundians, controlled much of France, and were poised to conquer the entire kingdom. Orléans, a strategically vital city located on the Loire River, was under siege by English forces. Its capture would have opened the way for the English to advance further into southern France, potentially leading to the complete collapse of the French monarchy. The siege had been ongoing for months, and the French defenders were growing increasingly desperate. Morale was low, and it seemed as though the city was on the verge of falling. However, the arrival of Joan of Arc, a young peasant girl from Lorraine, changed everything. Joan claimed to have received visions from God, instructing her to drive the English out of France and restore the French king to his rightful throne. She arrived in Orleans with a small contingent of troops, bringing with her a banner emblazoned with the image of God and the Virgin Mary. Joan's presence immediately boosted the morale of the French troops. She inspired them with her unwavering faith and her determination to liberate their country. Leading the French forces, Joan launched a series of bold attacks against the English fortifications. She displayed remarkable courage and military acumen, leading her troops to victory after victory. In just a few days, the French under Joan's leadership forced the English to lift the siege of Orléans. The victory at Orléans was a major turning point in the Hundred Years' War. It marked the beginning of a French resurgence, as the French forces, inspired by Joan of Arc, began to drive the English out of France. Joan herself became a national heroine, a symbol of French resistance, and a testament to the power of faith and determination. Leningrad. The Siege of Leningrad, lasting from September 1941 to January 1944, stands as one of the most horrific and devastating sieges in human history. During World War II, Nazi Germany launched a massive invasion of the Soviet Union. As the German forces advanced, they encircled the city of Leningrad, now St. Petersburg, cutting off all supply lines and subjecting the city to a brutal blockade. The siege lasted for nearly 900 days, during which the population of Leningrad endured unimaginable suffering. Food supplies dwindled rapidly, leading to widespread starvation. People were forced to eat anything they could find, including wallpaper paste, leather, and even pets. The winter months were particularly harsh, with temperatures plummeting to extreme lows. Many people froze to death in their homes or on the streets. The city was also subjected to constant bombardment by German artillery and air raids. Thousands of buildings were destroyed, and countless civilians were killed or wounded. Despite the horrific conditions, the people of Leningrad refused to surrender. They continued to resist the German invaders, maintaining vital industries and supporting the war effort. The Road of Life, a precarious supply route across the frozen Lake Ladoga, provided a lifeline to the city, bringing in limited amounts of food and supplies. However, the Road of Life was constantly under attack by German forces, making it a dangerous and unreliable source of sustenance. The siege of Leningrad finally came to an end in January 1944, when Soviet forces launched a successful offensive that drove the German army away from the city. However, the siege had taken a terrible toll. It is estimated that over 1 million civilians died during the siege, mostly from starvation, disease, and exposure. The siege of Leningrad is a testament to the resilience and courage of the human spirit in the face of unimaginable suffering. Sarajevo. The siege of Sarajevo, lasting from April 1992 to February 1996, represents a tragic chapter in modern European history, characterized by ethnic conflict and immense human suffering. Following the breakup of Yugoslavia, Bosnia and Herzegovina declared its independence, leading to a brutal war between Bosnian Serbs, Bosnian Croats, and Bosnian Muslims. Sarajevo, the capital of Bosnia and Herzegovina, became a focal point of the conflict, besieged by Bosnian Serb forces who aimed to create a Greater Serbia. The Bosnian Serb army, supported by the Serbian government, surrounded Sarajevo and subjected the city to a relentless campaign of shelling, sniper fire, and blockades. The siege lasted for nearly 4 years, making it the longest siege of a capital city in modern history. The civilian population of Sarajevo endured unimaginable hardships. They were cut off from essential services, including water, electricity, and medical care. Food and supplies were scarce, and many people were forced to scavenge for survival. The city was under constant threat of attack, with snipers and artillery shells claiming the lives of thousands of civilians. The international community struggled to respond effectively to the crisis in Bosnia. The United Nations imposed an arms embargo, which disproportionately affected the Bosnian government, preventing them from defending themselves against the better-equipped Bosnian Serb army. The UN also established safe areas in Sarajevo and other Bosnian cities, but these areas proved to be ineffective in protecting civilians. The siege of Sarajevo finally came to an end in February 1996, following the signing of the Dayton Agreement, which brought an end to the Bosnian War. However, the siege left a lasting scar on the city and its people. Thousands of people were killed or wounded, and much of the city was destroyed. The siege of Sarajevo serves as a stark reminder of the human cost of ethnic conflict, and the importance of international efforts to prevent and resolve such crises. Tyre. The siege of Tyre, orchestrated by Alexander the Great in 332 BC, stands as a remarkable testament to Alexander's military genius and his unwavering determination. Tyre, a powerful and prosperous Phoenician city-state located on an island off the coast of modern-day Lebanon, was a major obstacle to Alexander's conquest of the Persian Empire. The city was heavily fortified, with strong walls and a well-equipped navy. When Alexander demanded that Tyre surrender and allow him to enter the city to offer sacrifices to the god Melkart, the Tyrians refused, declaring their neutrality. Alexander, however, was not willing to accept neutrality. He recognized the strategic importance of Tyre and was determined to capture the city. Lacking a fleet of his own, Alexander faced a formidable challenge. The island city was surrounded by water, making a direct assault impossible. Alexander, however, devised an ingenious plan. He would build a causeway, or mole, from the mainland to the island, allowing his army to march directly into the city. The construction of the causeway was a massive undertaking, requiring the labor of thousands of soldiers and engineers. The Tyrians, however, did not sit idly by. They launched frequent attacks on the construction crews, using their ships to harass the workers and disrupt their progress. Despite these attacks, Alexander's forces persevered, slowly but surely building the causeway. As the causeway neared the city walls, Alexander acquired a fleet of ships from allied cities. He used this fleet to blockade Tyre and prevent supplies from reaching the city. After 7 months of relentless effort, Alexander's forces finally breached the city walls and captured Tyre. The siege was a brutal and bloody affair, with both sides suffering heavy casualties. Alexander's victory at Tyre demonstrated his military prowess and his ability to overcome seemingly insurmountable obstacles. Rhodes. The siege of Rhodes in 1480 represents a heroic defense by the Knights Hospitaller against a massive Ottoman invasion, showcasing their military prowess and unwavering commitment to Christendom. The Knights Hospitaller, also known as the Knights of St. John, were a Christian military order that had established a stronghold on the island of Rhodes in the early 14th century. Rhodes was strategically important, controlling key trade routes in the eastern Mediterranean. By the late 15th century, the Ottoman Empire, under Sultan Mehmed II, had risen to become a major power in the region. Mehmed II, the conqueror of Constantinople, set his sights on capturing Rhodes, believing that it was a crucial step towards controlling the Mediterranean. In 1480, Mehmed II launched a massive invasion of Rhodes, sending a fleet of over 100 ships and an army of tens of thousands of soldiers. The Knights Hospitaller, led by Grand Master Pierre d'Aubusson, prepared to defend their island fortress. The city of Rhodes was heavily fortified, with strong walls, towers, and moats. The Knights also had a well-trained and disciplined army composed of knights from all over Europe. The Ottoman siege lasted for several months, during which the Ottomans subjected the city to intense bombardment and numerous assaults. The Knights, however, repelled every attack, inflicting heavy casualties on the Ottoman forces. The siege reached its climax in July 1480, when the Ottomans launched a massive assault on the city walls. The Knights fought valiantly, repelling the attack and inflicting heavy losses on the Ottomans. After several failed attempts to capture the city, the Ottomans finally abandoned the siege and withdrew from Rhodes. The defense of Rhodes was a major victory for Christendom, preventing the Ottomans from gaining a foothold in the eastern Mediterranean. It also demonstrated the strength and resilience of the Knights Hospitaller. Alamo. The Battle of the Alamo, fought in 1836, while not a classic siege, represents a pivotal moment in the Texas Revolution, symbolizing Texan courage and the fight for independence. In the early 19th century, American settlers began migrating to Texas, which was then part of Mexico. Tensions between the American settlers and the Mexican government grew, eventually leading to a revolt. In 1836, a group of Texan rebels, including famous figures like Davy Crockett and Jim Bowie, occupied the Alamo, a former mission in San Antonio. The Alamo was poorly fortified and undermanned, but the Texan rebels were determined to defend it against the advancing Mexican army. The Mexican army, led by General Antonio López de Santa Anna, arrived in San Antonio in February 1836. Santa Anna demanded that the Texan rebels surrender, but they refused. Santa Anna then laid siege to the Alamo, bombarding it with artillery fire. The siege lasted for 13 days, during which the Texan rebels endured constant bombardment and attacks. Despite being heavily outnumbered, the Texan rebels fought bravely, inflicting heavy casualties on the Mexican army. On March 6, 1836, Santa Anna launched a final assault on the Alamo. The Texan rebels fought to the last man, but they were eventually overwhelmed by the Mexican forces. All of the Texan defenders, including Crockett and Bowie, were killed in the battle. The Battle of the Alamo was a military defeat for the Texan rebels, but it became a powerful symbol of Texan courage and determination. The cry "Remember the Alamo" became a rallying cry for the Texan cause, inspiring others to join the fight for independence. A few weeks after the Battle of the Alamo, the Texan army, led by Sam Houston, defeated Santa Anna at the Battle of San Jacinto, securing Texan independence. Antioch. The Siege of Antioch, a protracted and arduous affair during the First Crusade in 1097 to 1098, highlights the Crusaders' unwavering faith and resilience in the face of immense challenges. The First Crusade, launched in 1096, was a religious expedition aimed at recapturing the Holy Land from Muslim control. The Crusader army, composed of knights and soldiers from various European countries, marched across Asia Minor, facing numerous hardships along the way. In October 1097, the Crusaders arrived at Antioch, a heavily fortified city in modern-day Turkey. Antioch was strategically important, controlling key trade routes in the region. The Crusaders laid siege to the city, hoping to starve the defenders into submission. The siege lasted for over 8 months, during which the Crusaders endured severe food shortages, disease, and constant attacks from the city's garrison. The Crusaders' morale plummeted, and many deserted the army. In June 1098, the Crusaders finally managed to breach the city walls, capturing Antioch. However, their victory was short-lived. Just days after capturing the city, the Crusaders were themselves besieged by a large Muslim army, led by Karboka, the Atabeg of Mosul. The Crusaders were trapped inside Antioch with no hope of escape. The situation seemed hopeless, and many Crusaders lost faith. However, a peasant named Peter Bartholomew claimed to have had a vision, revealing the location of the Holy Lance, the spear that pierced Christ's side during the crucifixion. The discovery of the Holy Lance boosted the Crusaders' morale, inspiring them to fight on. On June 28, 1098, the Crusaders, carrying the Holy Lance, launched a desperate attack on the Muslim army. To their surprise, the Crusaders achieved a stunning victory, routing the Muslim forces and securing their control of Antioch. The Siege of Antioch was a pivotal moment in the First Crusade, demonstrating the Crusaders' unwavering faith and their ability to overcome seemingly insurmountable obstacles. Vicksburg. The Siege of Vicksburg in 1863 was a critical turning point in the American Civil War, securing Union control of the Mississippi River and significantly weakening the Confederacy. Vicksburg, Mississippi, was a strategically vital city for the Confederacy, perched high on bluffs overlooking the Mississippi River. Its control allowed the Confederacy to control traffic on the river, maintaining crucial supply lines and communication between the eastern and western parts of the Confederacy. Union General Ulysses S. Grant recognized the importance of Vicksburg and launched a campaign to capture the city. After several failed attempts to directly assault Vicksburg, Grant decided to lay siege to the city, cutting off all supply lines and bombarding it with artillery fire. The siege lasted for over 40 days, during which the civilian population of Vicksburg endured immense suffering. The city was under constant bombardment, and food and supplies were scarce. Many residents were forced to live in caves dug into the hillsides to protect themselves from the shelling. The Confederate defenders, led by General John C. Pemberton, held out as long as they could, hoping for reinforcements to arrive. However, no reinforcements came, and the situation inside Vicksburg grew increasingly desperate. On July 4, 1863, Pemberton surrendered Vicksburg to Grant. The fall of Vicksburg was a major blow to the Confederacy. It gave the Union complete control of the Mississippi River, effectively splitting the Confederacy in two. It also boosted Union morale and paved the way for further Union victories. The Siege of Vicksburg is remembered as a pivotal moment in the Civil War, demonstrating Grant's strategic brilliance and the determination of the Union Army. Dien Bien Phu. The Battle of Dien Bien Phu in 1954 was a decisive event in the First Indochina War. The French army established a fortified base in the valley of Dien Bien Phu, hoping to lure the Viet Minh into a decisive battle. However, the Viet Minh, under General Vo Nguyen Giap, surrounded the base and subjected it to a prolonged siege. The French forces were gradually overwhelmed by the Viet Minh's superior numbers and artillery, and they eventually surrendered. The defeat at Dien Bien Phu marked the end of French colonial rule in Indochina and paved the way for the independence of Vietnam. These historical sieges showcase remarkable feats of military strategy, unwavering resilience, and profound human cost. From ancient conquests to modern conflicts, these pivotal moments shaped the course of history and left lasting legacies. Thanks for watching. Which siege shocked you the most? Tell me in the comments. And make sure you like, share, and subscribe so you don't miss the next one. Until then, bye.